I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. Irene's mother, Rose Stone, used to say, "Smile, comb your hair, put on your lipstick, and go out to meet the world." This was a brave philosophy coming from a woman who lost her husband Lou during complications from a World War I injury, when her children, Irene and Richard, were only nursery school tots. When Irene was 13, she got a job at the Dixie Shops as the assistant cashier. She earned 35 cents an hour and started learning retailing. Her career as a working woman had begun. One day, when 19-year-old Irene was waiting for a streetcar, a conversation with a neighbor changed her life.
I was at the University of Utah waiting for a bus and talking to a neighbor. And she says, "You know, you're very pretty and you have a lot of poise. And I would like you to come to CCMI to model." And after I picked myself up from the sidewalk, I thought, wow, that's great. I'd be happy to do that.
On campus, Fred Tannenbaum was the president of Hillel, and Irene was his secretary. Fred arranged a party at the Hotel Utah and gave Irene his fraternity pin. Fred claims Irene proposed to him. She asked how much he made and told him that she thought that would be enough for the two of them to live on. Irene graduated from the University of Utah in 1949. 3 days later, she married Fred. I was determined to get my sheepskin first.
I was standing in my kitchen in our new home, and I had two little boys, and I realized that I had promised to be secretary for all three Jewish organizations: Council of Women, Hadassah, and Neighborhood.
What were you thinking, Irene?
I guess I couldn't say no.
Drawn by Hadassah's humanitarian contribution to Israel, Irene served as their president from 1960 to 1962. Years later, she toured Hadassah's hospital in Israel and witnessed its state-of-the-art research.
It was a shock to me that I, at the young age of 47, I had breast cancer. And at that time, the research wasn't as great as it is today.
Believe it or not, Irene returned to modeling just 2 weeks after her surgery. This led to her involvement with the Susan B. Komen Walks and Races and Renato Saltz's retreats for his foundation, Image Reborn. She had never been comfortable with public speaking, but this was important.
I recall the evening. She got up in front of this crowd of 400 people, and really, to me at that moment, you showed the strength and courage of somebody who, lived a wonderful life after breast cancer.
Both of her sons left for college, Larry to Arizona State and Marty off to Harvard. Not long after graduation, Marty was home for a visit.
We went to a Mexican restaurant and we're discussing the politics of the day and saying, wasn't it terrible that Anita Bryant said was against gays? And Marty looked at me and said, "Mom, I'm gay." Marty, the world doesn't accept gays like you would like them to. It was very hard for Fred to accept at that time. And but we read and we joined organizations. They were many organizations that appeared for helping gay and lesbian people.
Marty became the national president of Keshet, Rainbow, working for full inclusion of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Jews in Jewish life. After Fred's death, Irene attended Keshet's annual fundraiser and sat with Congressman Barney Frank.
The thing that I so respect about Irene in so many ways is they came together to make a family gift. And so rather than just sending a check, Irene got on a plane and wanted to physically be there to support Marty and Alex. There were not a lot of parents of children, particularly silver-haired, in the audience, and it was a very powerful statement. I recall many years ago when Marty was home visiting, he, Fred, and Irene, and I believe Larry had met with Carol Einhorn at the time to try to think, how do they handle aging in place? And then it kind of just sat on the back burner. That changed when Fred had a very serious heart attack, and at that point, JFS became much more critical in helping really navigate the care that Fred would need and also that Irene would need in terms of her support system. And then I recall being most touched really at the end of Fred's life and realizing how important all those plans were.
This is one of the most caring, compassionate women that I have ever had the honor of knowing.
Joanne's mother, Naveen Findling Spitzer, was a wise and compassionate person. Naveen was an active member of the Jewish Relief Society, later known as JFS, an organization managed from the home of Mrs. Ethel Zucker. When notified, Naveen would dress up, take the trolley to town, and solicit funds from the Jewish merchants to buy shoes, bus tickets, meals, toiletries, and hotel stays for the endless stream of transients.
My mother was given a case of a permanent man, and my mother would go to friends and she would beg, borrow, and go into her own pocketbook for glasses, for shoes, for alterations for his clothes, and for all the necessary things that he required.
Joanne was fortunate to have had teachers who taught her to share and to know that learning is limitless. She received a scholarship to Mills College to study art. However, in 1951, she left school to marry Dick McGillis, 12 years her senior. Immediately following her honeymoon, she plunged into organizational and community service. Shortly before the 1967 Six-Day War in Israel, Joanne chaired the Women's Division campaign of United Jewish Appeal and rescued an afternoon fundraising event from an ineffective solicitation speaker.
I had just heard on the Academy Award presentation the song Born Free, and I used that to recall the fact that some people are born free, certainly other people are not. And I remembered that people had scrambled to Israel having not been born free, and I recalled all the instances of people who were trying to recover from having not been born free, and I used that to try and raise the necessary funds. This episode taught me that I needed always to have a plan B.
During her second term as president of Hadassah in 1971, she persuaded the owner of the old Century 21 theaters to let her have a showing of Fiddler on the Roof for a premiere party to raise funds.
The women of Hadassah baked the most delectable hors d'oeuvres and pastry. I got somebody to give me several cases of champagne, and we sold tickets all over town. We raised $2,500, which would be equivalent to about $25,000 today. And the manager called me many months later and wanted to know if we wanted to do anything else at his theater.
When the McGillis Jewish Community Center Elementary School became independent in 2002, Dick and Joanne purchased the historic Douglas School.
A very wonderful philosopher and rabbi by the name of Mordecai Kaplan said, "If you have a rendezvous with destiny, be sure to come on time." And McGillis School was the adventure of a lifetime.
Hey, why are we using the descriptor cool? Where do they live?
In the cool and moist dirt.
We have had teachers, we have had staff, we have had incredible members of our community who have fought diligently and lobbied and just done the most marvelous things to get this school in the position that it's in. It's one thing to build a building. It's another thing to have the situation that is the educational and the marvelous arts and crafts and language and dance and all the offers that are not going on in public school, going on in this building.
Our grandfather, Arthur Frank, I thought I was the favorite one. You said you were the favorite one.
Well, I was the favorite. There's no question about that.
But why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I was his constant companion.
He took you to the Hotel Utah every Saturday.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. I am jealous of you because you got to go to the Hotel Utah, now the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, every Saturday. I know, but I don't hate you.
I grew up with a family who were always caring about others. And I think I learned that from my mother. I became very interested in all the things my mother was doing. Plus, I had this built-in caring for other people.
Suzanne attended Rowland Hall School for Girls. When she was 12 years old, Evelyn Rosenblatt, who was like a mother to her, took her to the neighborhood house.
I was so excited because I loved being with children, but I had never had the opportunity of working with children who didn't have everything that I had. And I wanted to spend as much time as I could in order to make their lives better.
After attending Mount Vernon Junior College in Washington, D.C., she transferred to the University of California, Berkeley to study early childhood education. During her senior year, on August 12, 1952, she married Larry Goldsmith. Larry was drafted into the Army and served during the Korean conflict. When their second child, Doug, was born in 1956, Suzanne's father, Simon Frank, recruited Larry to work in Salt Lake City as vice president of Arthur Frank Clothier.
Do you remember when you came back?
Yeah.
And you and I decided that the JCC should have an accredited nursery school?
Yeah, well, you decided that and I joined you. We were founders.
Yes.
Founders of the nursery school, preschool, the Jewish Community Center. We should have a big plaque up there, actually, now that I think about it.
Our nursery school needed to be more child-centered and education-centered. Do you recall that? Now they're also learning Jewish things, which I think is great.
We both felt very strongly it wasn't just playing, you know, hippity hop, that's for sure.
Actually, I want to be a police officer. I'm going to put out police files.
It was a brand new thing. And so I think that we'll get a little credit for that, for changing the whole curriculum. Do you remember when I used to say the reason we did such a good job is because we were such good parents?
The Early Childhood Center continues as one of Utah's nationally accredited preschool programs. In the 60s, Suzanne helped to organize Head Start. She volunteered at the Holy Cross Hospital and eventually assumed the position Assistant Administrator for Patient and Public Relations. Since 1980, Salt Lake City's homeless crisis has consumed most of Suzanne's volunteer efforts.
The road home started, we started talking about it at the board meetings. And I don't remember how the name came up because we all sat and argued about it for a while. But we all felt very strongly about having a place for others who don't have any place to go. People thought I was crazy.
You are.
Yeah, to go sit in the park and talk to strangers. I said, a stranger is just a person. I want to know what they would like us as a community to do. And they all finally agreed, but what they really wanted was independence to get jobs. I mean, I remember this one man very, very well, and he said to me, how can I get a job when I never went to school? I said, you talk, don't you? Yeah. I said, can you spell? Yeah. You don't want that kind of a job. You want a people job. And I'll get you a people job. You can work in the kitchen, you can work in the dormitory, you can work any place you want to in the road home. He thought he died and gone to heaven.
In 1995, Suzanne was honored by the Utah Nonprofits Association with its Norma Matheson Award for Outstanding Contribution to the Nonprofit Sector. In 1998, Larry and Suzanne were recognized by United Jewish Federation of Utah for their assistance to Jews in need. That same year, Larry and Suzanne and their sons, Doug and Stephen, were honored at the annual Catholic Community Services of Utah Community Service Award Dinner.
Remember the story you told me about the PTA and the coffee?
I said, you know, we're ecumenical here. We're not just one church, we're not just one color, we're not just one thing.
And that did it?
Yeah.
Wow, Suzanne.
And so I said, at least we can serve coffee. I'll go down in history for that.
Irene always knows the right thing to do, whether it's to help or benefit an individual or children or the community.
Well, you know why you inspire me? Not because of everything you've done in your life, because of now. You can't see, you can't hear, and still you look beautiful. You wake up every day and you say, I am the luckiest person in the world.
Yeah.